morning, everybody. Great to see you all here, and just a word of congratulations to Hotel Concerts Brilliant. If this is the first user group meeting to have so many people here, that is success in itself. So well done to the team. I think you should be very proud. I'm going to talk about quite a lot of things today. A little bit of technology, a little bit of business. I'm going to talk in English. If there's anybody who doesn't understand what I say because I'm talking too fast, tell me. Please, just tell me. I won't be embarrassed, don't be embarrassed, just tell me, because I want to communicate to you. And if you have any questions, there'll be some time at the end. There'll be some things that you disagree with, possibly, I hope, and maybe we can have a talk. But let's just try and have an interactive dialogue. So, let's get going. This is me, Nick Price. I was, until recently, the CIO of Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group for 12 years, from 2000. I left, set up my own company. But I'm here to talk about our industry, and I'm going to do it in two parts. I want to take a look back at the first decade of this century, just to see some of the things that have impacted our industry. And then we're going to take a look forward and see some of the things, a few things that might impact our industry even more over the coming decade. So this is what I'm going to look at, the review and some opportunities. Let's start with the review. Our industry has been dominated by internet over the last 10 years. It has no doubt been the thing that has changed our landscape more than anything else. And we can see internet, as an enabling technology, and we can see internet as a product, and we can see it as an opportunity and a threat. And in some ways, in my view, it is an asset that has yet to be monetized, has yet to make us real money. And I want to show you some statistics to stand by that statement. When we look at internet usage as a product, here's some real numbers from the company I just left, Mandarin Oriental. This is usage of internet in the guest room over a 10-year period. And I bet you are all hoteliers, that you're seeing broadly the same kind of numbers. What this means is about 25% to 30% of occupied rooms buy internet every day, every night. This is buy, and the price of this is somewhere about 15 euros or 15 US dollars. So if it was free, it'd probably be greater. But what it shows you is a demand for a product that is quite unlike any other product that we have in the hotel industry. This product is very, very desired and demanded by our hotel guests. If we take a look at how that internet is consumed, what you can see is the green line is wireless and the yellow line is wired. Wireless takes off around 2008 and in fact continues. So internet, in my view, is a fundamental product of our industry. When I joined the hotel industry, someone said to me, you have to remember, Nick, you don't know anything about our industry. This was back in 2000. I need to tell you something. It's not about technology. This is a bed, bath, and breakfast industry. A bed, bath, and breakfast industry. And he was right, and it still is. But I would suggest to you today that it is a bed, bath, breakfast, and internet business. And if you don't do internet right in the hotels, then you are significantly damaging your business opportunity in your hotels simply because of the demand. Let's take a look at distribution, also internet enabled. There has been an enormous growth of internet distribution over the decade. If we look at, these are European figures, we can see a significant and continued growth of online internet travel bookings. What we also see, however, and this is up to 60 billion in Europe at 2009. Today it's a little more than 70 billion. It's a big, big business from nothing at the beginning of the decade. What we see though, when we look at real figures from hotel companies, is that the power shift in internet distribution is changing. What you see here is that there is a change from direct booking to the hotels to third-party intermediaries that we call online travel agencies, or OTAs. Those OTAs and travel agencies are becoming more powerful and more successful at the expense of the hotel's own brand, and that is very clear. We saw that in Mandarin Oriental as well, by the way, and this is a real statistic from the company I just left. If you take a look here, this is the percentage of online bookings at mandarinoriental.com. And what you see in 2008 and 2009 is a dip. This is percentage of leisure room nights at around 12% of maximum. So leisure room nights, 12% of leisure room nights, and taking a dip. And what happened is that leisure room nights are shifting to the online travel agencies. Quite a significant trend. And we come back to distribution when we look at the future. I want to talk quickly about in-room. All of us, as hoteliers, we have televisions in our room. But what do the guests actually do? The monetizable component of our hotel room televisions has, for the last 20 years, been movies and films. And if we take a look at that consumption, we see that in the decade, right at the middle of 2005-06, the statistics we have here, again from Mandarin Oriental, there was a broad consumption, about 10% of occupied rooms by movies on demand. What we saw, and what we can see, is a significant decline over the following 5 or 6 years. And in fact, if you look further out today and into the future, my view is that number is going down to 0. Now, why is that? I can give you 2 reasons why that will be. 1 is internet, and 2 is that. And if we connect this and internet to our televisions, we have a next generation hotel entertainment experience, and we'll be talking about that when we look at the future. The other one I like to look at is telephony. Now, who has telephones in their hotel rooms? Any hoteliers here? Hands up. How many telephones? How many of you don't have telephones? That is a very interesting stat. I've shown this slide to at least 5 different audiences. This is the first time anybody has put up their hand and said they don't have telephones. I congratulate you, sir. Well done. That is a view of the future that I think is well considered. Well done. Because if we take a look at it, I call this the great technology fail. When you go from 20% to 2% in a decade, and that's of use, this is revenue. This is revenue. When you go from 20% to 2%, maybe I should just explain that. If you take the total revenue over that period and you divide it by the years, and you allocate by year the amount that was consumed in that year, this is what that slide is showing. So 2% of that total revenue is generated in 2010. Today it's even less. Why would you put a telephone in a hotel room? Especially when you look at the cost of a telephone system, which is broadly consistent over that period. Now, if any of you are hotel owners or general managers or financial controllers, this is a very real consideration for you. This cost, by the way, is an accurate cost for the company I left. Your costs may be lower, but the fact is, the cost of a telephone system in 2000 and the cost of a telephone system today in 2012 are about the same. But the revenues generated and the profits generated from it are significantly different. Therefore, you have to ask the question, why do you need it? So, well done. If you answer it with no telephone, I think you're exactly right. Let's talk about applications. Application development. There have been, there were in the 1990s, the previous millennium, there were, or the previous, century, there were many examples of what I call do-it-yourself application development. And in fact, all of the big companies at that time wrote their own applications, all of them. Some of them have changed, but companies such as Marriott, for example, companies such as Hilton, companies such as Starwood, still run their own systems. I think none of these have been broadly successful. None of them have been broadly successful. They are deployed, but they are not successful because they are US-centric and they're not able to scale. So they're not able to be put in Europe. They're certainly not able to be deployed in Asia. So they're not positioned for global deployment. DIY, do-it-yourself application development, therefore, in general, has been a failure, in my view. We have seen in the decade of the 2000 to 2010, a lot of people come to us and say, I have your one-stop shop answer for hotel systems. You buy one sign, one check, one order, I can give you everything you need. Well, I don't know about you, but in the company where I came from, in a typical hotel, there were over 40 different pieces of software that I had to buy every single time in order to run that hotel. Now, no company, not even the biggest one in our industry, sells 40 different applications successfully everywhere around the globe. So what you're faced with is having to go and buy 40 different applications, or maybe for your hotel it's 10 or 15, but you buy them individually, you have to put them on a server in a basement, and it's a nightmare of complexity. And the one thing I can tell you is that today there are more applications in your hotel than there were 10, 12 years ago. So the problem is getting worse. I say here what happened to ASP. ASP, it was a jargon phrase, application services provider. A lot of companies said, oh, we put our application, you don't need to have it in our hotel, we will host it for you. That's a question we'll come back to later. But there is a single word that describes what might have happened to them, and that is cloud. If you've heard of cloud, I'm sure you have. We'll talk about that towards the end. And we have networks. When I joined the hotel industry in year 2000, the networks of the hotel industry were those that essentially connected up the back office and the reservations front desk. Today, that has changed completely. We have networks connecting to our rooms and within our rooms, connecting to telephones and televisions and to, in some cases, lighting and heating control. These networks have become very, very, very big. And those networks are themselves connected, hotels are themselves connected to hotel data centers. We are running in our industry a very complex environment, a very complex network environment that has one interesting consideration. It runs every hour of every day of every week of every year without stopping. This is a network environment in our hotels that is every bit as similar as a network that you would find in a financial dealing room. This is not a little network that if it goes wrong, nothing happens. If something goes wrong in our hotels, this is a major impact to our hotels. So we have, I think, gone from a position of a network under the stairs to a significant and modern hotel data center. These are actual pictures, by the way, of Mandarin Oriental data centers, except for the one on the right there. But they're real, and we're not putting little servers under the front desk anymore. This has changed completely in our industry. And it has impacted us in one significant way. It has left us with an on-property skills gap. And I think if any of you are general managers, or perhaps you're the IT people in the hotel, you will recognize this. As there has been more and more technology put into our hotels, we haven't kept up with the number and the quality of the technical people to run them. And at our hotels, we have a skills shortage, which we cannot fill. We cannot solve this problem by just applying people locally. We have to change the model. So as we've gone from central reservations to internet, to in-room IP televisions, to complex telephony systems, and to smart rooms, and these are all things that happened and are real. And they happen certainly at Mandarin Oriental and other hotels like that globally. What you find is there's a huge gap at the hotels, and that is something that needs to be solved and needs to be addressed, and it can be. And we've seen great challenges in one area that I really want you to understand. And maybe you do, maybe you'll agree with me, but the concept of data privacy, of guest information, and the privacy or privacy of that information, and keeping that secret, is hugely important in our industry. And back in 2000, we never even considered it. Why? There is a reason. It's called internet. Without internet, this would not be a problem. It is a huge problem today. Our industry is the number one source of credit card theft in the entire world. The number one source. Please understand that. There are Russian and Chinese gangs of hackers who look at our hotels just because they're easy targets. And I'm not exaggerating. This is very, very real. PCI was born in 2004. It's very new. PCI is the credit card industry's response to this problem, to make our networks more secure. But there is a lack of awareness, and I certainly worried all the time when I was with Mandarin Oriental whether I would wake up one day to find that there was a loss of credit card data, or even guest information, which I think would be even as damaging. So this is a huge issue for us, and it's because of internet. And we've seen something completely different, green initiatives, most of which I think are fairly unrealistic, but there is an intent to be green. And moving away again a little bit, we've seen the development of asset-light business models. This is a plaque that I saw when I checked into a Westin hotel, and I just want to read a couple of points. It says, the Reston Heights is independently owned by Reston Square hotel operators and operated by Crestline Hotels and Resorts. That shows you the fracture in our industry. We have a brand, we have an operator, and we have a building owner. That is a huge issue for our industry as we expand, because it means nobody is in control of the decision making. And it makes it hard for us to sell technology when nobody is in control. If you have to ask 3 different people to make a decision to buy one thing, you will never get a decision. But what that has allowed us to do is allowed international chains to expand without owning their assets, and in some cases without employing their staff. And you've seen huge expansion globally of international chains over the last 10 years. So that's a look backwards. That's a look backwards. What I think you will see is that our industry has changed a lot over a 10-year period. And my message for you, looking forward, and I've just put 2010 to 2020, but it could be 2012 to 2020, is that change is here and now. that change, we haven't arrived at a point where we're going to stop. We are moving. This industry is going to evolve and change incredibly over the 10 years ahead of us. And I think it's our job as industry professionals and your job as people who run hotels and own hotels and work in hotels to understand some of these changes. Because only if you understand them can you actually make effective business decisions. So I want to look at just 3 areas of that change. There will be many different areas of change, but I want to look at 3 of them. And that is in the area of distribution, in the area of in-room entertainment, and this thing called cloud, which we will talk about. Try and put that into some place where everybody leaves with some understanding of what it is and why that might be a good thing. So let's start with distribution. When I think of distribution, this is what I think of. I think of a travel agent, and this is the best representation of a travel agent that I could find. Somebody sitting there saying, "How can I help you?" on a phone. This is my impression of what a travel agent looks like. And if you try and diagrammatically represent what happened in the 1990s, that travel agent was the front end of our distribution process. And we connected that travel agent to global distribution systems, and the global distribution systems connected to our central reservation systems. And there was a flow of information between them. And that flow of information, I'm sorry, I'm talking ahead of you. That flow of information is our customer, our travel agent, our global distribution system connecting to our central reservations. That flow of information between them is very imperfect, and it has 2 fundamental flaws. Problem number 1 is that the receiving hotel can't find out anything about the customer because the travel agencies either don't want to give that information or don't have the technical capability to provide it or don't capture it in the first place. And there's a very poor representation of the hotel's information. What is the rate and availability today? What are the accurate imaging of the rooms? What do they look like today? What are the modern photos? That was the history of 1990s. In the 2000s, we tried to address that change, that problem. And we addressed it largely by adding our own websites, brand.com, and all of you have your own websites. And the industry addressed it by adding online travel agencies, such as Expedia and Travelocity and Booking and thousands of others. But the issue, for me, is that we've just made it more complex for the customer. Much more complex for the customer. Now they have to choose where to go. And we are trying hard to steer them away from travel agencies and online travel agencies into our own brands. But when I look at them, I still see that travel agent. I don't think we have changed our industry. We've simply made it more complicated. We've replicated the same problem and made it more complicated for our customers. And we are trying to ask them to be loyal to us. And we're failing. And we're failing. And we try and do it through points systems and cards, and we're failing. Customers are not loyal to us because we're making their lives very, very complicated. And if you take a look at Room Key, for example, I don't know how many know of Room Key. This is an alliance of some of the big brands to create a destination travel site to compete with online travel agencies. I think personally, this is not likely to be a success. I really can't see this being a success because it just makes it even more complicated for these companies. Because Marriott.com and Hilton.com and Wyndham.com are not going away. We just added another one, another destination. So, to summarize my view of where we are with distribution at the moment, we've spent 10 years, I think, fighting the wrong enemy. We've thought of online travel agencies as the enemy, and we created another online travel agency to compete with them. In my view, when you really look forward, the environment of distribution is completely different. I think our friends, or our enemies, to use that word frenemy, so that you'll find on Facebook, I think they're more likely to be Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon, who have unique capabilities to affect our distribution environment that we in the hotel industry cannot replicate. They have maps. They have maps. Now, when I book a hotel room, I never go to Expedia. I never go to Booking.com. I never go to Travelocity first. I always go to a map. I say to myself, where am I staying? Where is my hotel? How can I therefore book? From that map, why wouldn't I just be able to say, press that link and book from there? And you've seen Google, and you've seen Bing, Microsoft's search engine, add hotel-specific features and functionality to enable that booking. And I think this is a trend that's just starting now that will be significantly impactful over this coming decade. And if I look at it, difficult to represent, my view of where we might be in 2015 to 2020 is a distribution landscape that is possibly dominated by Google, Microsoft with Maps, Facebook with 800 million users, where Facebook knows a lot about you and can provide that information to the hotels, who you are, what your likes, dislikes are, who your friends are, to the hotels, where you might be even able to pay with iTunes. Why not? I can buy a book in iTunes. Why can't I buy a hotel room in iTunes? I can buy a song in iTunes. Why can't I buy a hotel room? Just remember that iTunes will charge you 30%, right? But I think it's very possible for iTunes to merchandise hotel rooms. I think it's possibly even more likely that Amazon might want to merchandise hotel rooms. So this landscape is becoming very, very different for us. The key thing here is that what we are concentrating on in our industry is fulfillment and central reservation and websites, which cost at most 50 million euros, 50 million US dollars to create. But if you look at mapping, if you look at social networks, if you look at huge back-end merchandising, global merchandising internet stores, the price to do those is 10, 20 billion and up. There's nobody in our industry, whether it's a hotel company or whether it's a supplier, a vendor in our industry, that can spend that kind of money to compete here. So it may be time for our industry to step back and say, who are we really competing with? And maybe it's time to join these companies and to really think about how we can put our hotel rooms as one click away from that map, which is likely, by the way, to be found here, not on a PC, but a map here. Look on a map, click, book. How we can do that effectively, rather than trying to create yet another online travel agency. So that's where I see distribution. Let's talk about in-room entertainment. We talked about the tail off, the significant decline of video on demand. This is my projection over the coming few years. I think it will go to zero. And the reason I think it will go to zero is because guests have their own. They have their own on the internet, they have their own on their phones, they have their own on their PCs that they bring to our hotel rooms. Why would they want to watch ours? If that happens, what will happen because of it? Well, one thing is that hotels might say, I'm not going to buy a television. The gentleman didn't buy phones. Maybe You'd make the same business decision and not buy a television. Think how that would change the economies of the room. If you didn't have a television, how much space would you get back in a room? And what could you do with that space? I think you could do some interesting things. So maybe a television isn't quite as desirable as we think. It's a question to ask. One thing we might want to do with it, though, is change the model. Today, our content is stored in a hotel. It's on systems in the basement, and we can only provide to that user, to that guest, the content that we have, whether that's our television channels or whether that's our movies. In Europe, certainly in Europe, there are so many people speaking so many different languages. We cannot appeal to everybody. And that's the same in Asia. There's only really one country today where there's one language, and that's North America. So maybe it's a better idea to just say, why don't we simplify our environment and just connect our mobile phones to our televisions and use the content that's here on our phones, or maybe the content that's coming from the services that the guest already has on their mobile phones, and stream that to the hotels. Now, you look at me, stream that to the televisions, excuse me. Now you look at me and you say, Wolf, that's science fiction. That can't be done. Nobody can do it. Well, I can tell you, I've spent 6 months looking at this, just now, just recently. This is where I have been involved in. And I can tell you that within the next 6 months, this is a very, very realizable opportunity where your telephone is not talking to the hotel Wi-Fi, but is talking directly to the television. You don't even need Wi-Fi in your room for this to work. This will happen, and it will happen at low cost, really low cost. And I think this represents a huge change in the way that we do in-room entertainment in our hotels, and it will rapidly and significantly reduce our cost of doing in-room entertainment. This, I think, is a massive opportunity for us, and it requires us to reset the way we think about in-room entertainment. What else has happened in our industry? If you look globally across our industry, the one thing that you can see in our hotels is that our cost base is rising. Of course, our cost base is a human employee staff cost base. It doesn't matter where you look, whether it's North America, whether it's Europe, whether it's Asia, even China, that cost base is rising. That minimum wage requires us to think about the efficiencies of labour. And I have two things to say here. One is, I am really surprised how inefficient we still are. And let me give you an example of that inefficiency. How many hoteliers here can today, right now, know exactly where, physically where in their hotel a housekeeper is when they're cleaning the rooms? Is there anybody? And I mean that you know they're in this room. Because if you don't, what they're doing is they're moving up and down the corridor, trying to find which room is vacant, and they're knocking on rooms. Is there someone still in there? That is a huge waste of labour. How many times do you send a bellman up to deliver baggage to a room, and he comes down empty with no baggage, but there's a person in the room next door wanting to check out? We do this because we have a mobile workforce, and that mobile workforce, we can't track them. We don't know where they are. This is a change that will happen. This is a change that will happen over this decade. And we will be able to squeeze efficiencies out of our labour force. And if you could put 1% more labour efficiency at that low end, you would generate such a flow-through of profits that you would be a very, very different hotel. So this is an area where I think our industry technically needs to focus. And it's something doable, and it will happen in this decade. There is one other way to minimize costs. And it is a way that we can do now. And it introduces the next subject that I want to talk about. We can remove people from the hotel entirely, some of those people. And probably the right people to move from the hotel would be the IT people. And that might be uncomfortable for some people. But really, the days when we are looking after systems that are present, physically present in our hotel, those days are behind us. If we are looking forward, we need to think of hotels that have very little physical technology in them, in the building, and most of that technology somewhere else, that are managed by professional, capable people, and doing so with an economy of scale that is greatly different from what we have now. And that we call the cloud. So when we're looking at cloud, that is one way to look at it. It's a way of reducing the complexity of what we have by moving some of that distributed complexity and putting it in a central place, almost like the mainframe that we used to have years ago. There are some other very interesting attributes of cloud. I'm going to make a statement here. By 2015, in my view, about 75%, or the majority, of successful hotel companies would have migrated their core systems to the cloud. And when I mean core systems, I don't mean the laundry system, I don't mean the staff, the employee time clock. What I mean is the property management system, the accounting system, the sales system, the point of sale system, and others like that. There is no reason today that you would want to buy those systems and physically put them in the hotel. You don't need to. And in fact, I think you shouldn't. I think you should be looking at moving them out of the hotel to a properly located place. So let's just take a look at some of those reasons why you might want to do it. Well, one is you have too much technology in the hotel in the first place. You can't manage it. You remember I said there's a skills gap. No hotel anywhere in the world, not a Mandarin Oriental, not any hotel anywhere, can afford to put the number of people that they need in to manage the technology they have. We have the need to rapidly deploy. When you build a hotel, I would imagine most people here have been involved in building hotels. If you build hotels and you install systems, what are you installing those hotel systems into? You're installing them into a building, a physical construction that is not finished, with construction workers running everywhere. You can't train your employees, you have nowhere to train them. It's not the right way of doing it. Wouldn't it be easier to just, close to the point of opening, be able to flick a switch and turn on the systems from somewhere else, and not have those systems in a dusty basement that is not clean? And that is a very real opportunity. We have an opportunity to turn our purchasing from CapEx to OpEx. What do I mean by that? Let's just take a look. CapEx to OpEx. And I'll move here. CapEx to OpEx. It is the opportunity to say, I'm not going to buy this system with from my capital expenditure budget, because I don't have a physical property to buy. I'm not buying a physical thing. I'm not buying a license to software. What I'm buying is a license to use. And I can expense that from my operating expense of my hotels. That is a great opportunity in this business, I think. A great opportunity. because it allows us as hotel operators to be in control of what we spend. We don't have to go to a building owner and say, would you approve this capital expenditure? It's a huge opportunity. It allows us also to be much more agile. So we can open a new hotel quickly. We can train a new hotel. But we can also close a hotel if we want to, or we can change its brand. And we can change the systems that are delivered to that brand without having to change physical servers in a hotel basement, which I think is huge. And it allows us to become global. If you, the hoteliers here today, were to open a hotel in China tomorrow, and maybe you can't imagine that, but maybe you will be doing that in 5 or 10 years' time. How would you do it? Would you take the same systems that you have today that are in the basement of your hotel and try and put them in China? Or maybe there's a better way. Maybe you can just turn it on from the cloud. And lastly, a point that I do want to make is that more than almost anything else, cloud allows you to properly secure and manage the information that you have about your hotels, because it guards it properly in one place. And it addresses PCI almost completely. PCI, this payment card industry, almost completely, because it removes from your hotels the physical storage of that information in the first place. There is a huge opportunity for cloud in these areas, but not just in these areas. I urge you to think about cloud as a big opportunity, and I know Hotel Concepts Brilliant have some cloud stories to talk to you about with Itesso. I congratulate them on being first to market with this capability, because really this is the future, and I'm really proud of what they've done here. When we talked, I showed this slide earlier, when we talked about application software, we talked about having lots of applications. I want to warn you about one thing. Over the last 10 years, 12 years, when I was in Mandarin Oriental and as CIO, I regularly would receive the CEOs of software companies coming to me and saying, you know that piece of software that we sell you, the last one you bought a license to, we put it on a server, it's in the basement of your hotels. Well, the next one, it's not going to be there. We're not going to do it that way. What we're going to do is we're going to move it out into what we call a cloud. It's our own data center. It's running in Frankfurt, or it's running in Singapore. And you'll be able to do everything you need to do from there. The problem with that approach is, there are two problems with that approach. One is, it only addresses one application. There's only one application at a time. So these vendors, these suppliers are not thinking of all the 40 applications that I need to do. They're thinking only of their own. And it puts them in different places on the internet. And it makes my job so much more difficult, because now, as a hotel company, I have to find out how I can integrate a point of sale system that's in a data center in Singapore with a sales system that's in a data center on the east coast of America, with a PMS system that's in a data center in Frankfurt. And it's very, very, very difficult to do. This is a very real danger for our industry. And I really warn you, when hotel companies say, I'm going to put this in my data center, I'm going to host it for you, you need to think of all of the applications that you have to do, and how can you strategically move all of them to one place? Not 10 different ones that are controlled by different people. But how can you, over the course of maybe 10 or 12 years, move all of them to one place? And that is the key thing. And that place, I suppose if you were going to say anything, you would say would be an ecosystem of hotel applications. And I want to try and explain what an ecosystem is. And I have, I think, 5 minutes, and I can just about do it. An ecosystem. These are words said by a gentleman called Stephen Elop, the CEO of Nokia, about a year ago. And I think he says it very eloquently. So I want to just read what he says and pull out some words. He says, the battle of devices has now become a war of ecosystems, where ecosystems include not only the hardware and software of the device, but developers, applications, e-commerce, advertising, search, social applications, location-based services, unified communications, and many other things. Now, when he says devices, we have to think of hospitality applications. That's the similarity here. But he says our competitors aren't taking our market share with devices, they're taking our market share with an entire ecosystem. And here he was referring to Apple and to Android. But this means we're going to have to decide how we build, catalyze, or join an ecosystem. And this is exactly the point, that what our hospitality industry needs is a hospitality ecosystem that is in the cloud, that is in one place, and joins all these different parts together. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. I really do. I think we have the opportunity to do that today. If you look at the big strategic moves that are costing tens and 20 and 30 billion euros and more from companies like Microsoft, from Google, from Amazon, you see these ecosystems being built. And the name here, Azure, is a name that will, I think, become familiar to you. And it's a name that describes the ecosystem for cloud from Microsoft. It is also, coincidentally, exactly where you would find new, innovative hospitality products from the Hotel Concepts brilliant Itesso. This is exactly the right place for them to be. It is a cloud environment that is open to everybody. All suppliers can play a part here. And what you can see is that over time, that you will be able to buy not just a property management system, but a sales system, an accounting system, a point of sale system, and all the other applications that you want. You will be able to find them in one place, in one cloud, stored securely, properly, carefully, and at lower cost. And that information will be globally available. And let's just talk about that quickly. What is the difference between this and a cloud that an individual supplier comes to you with? Well, the difference here is that this cloud is global. It is available globally. And that the information in this cloud is not only integrated, but it is also what we call cached and replicated. So that a hotel of a chain in Asia has the same access to that information as a hotel from the same chain in Europe, as a hotel from a chain in North America. We have local access to data. To do this costs billions of dollars. But luckily, that's not billions of dollars that you have to spend. It's not billions of dollars that the hospitality suppliers have to spend. But it's the billions of dollars or euros that Microsoft has spent, or Google has spent, to bring this ecosystem to reality. This is a huge, fundamental shift in the way that we deploy applications across all industries. I think hospitality is the perfect industry for cloud, and I'm really, really glad that we have the opportunity now to put applications into Azure from Microsoft or Amazon or Google, but I really think Azure is a perfect example for it. I want to talk about one thing, about how to go to cloud. There's no doubt that you will be going to cloud. No doubt. Over the next 10 years, you will be going to cloud. Your applications will move there. But a lot of people ask me, they say, how would I do that? What would be the best way to start? Well, luckily, you're in this room because you have a supplier that has been forward-thinking and they have next-generation product, and that product is already in a real cloud in Azure. And that is a great opportunity, I think, for you and for this industry. But there's another way to look at it as well, and a way that I think is very compatible with that. All of us run Office applications. All of us run email. How many of those emails are sitting on servers in your basement of your hotel? I bet you lots. I bet you many of you have email systems that are running. Some of you may have heard of Office 365 from Microsoft or Google Apps for business. I'll just look at Office 365. It is absolutely, in my view, the right place to start. If you're running Microsoft Desktop, if you're running Outlook as your email client, if you're using Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint to run the boring things in your business, why are they locally on your computers in your hotels? They don't need to be. What this is moving those applications and those services into the cloud. And it's exactly the same place that we talked about, exactly the same cloud from Microsoft. And it does it as an operating expense, not a capital expense. And it means that your applications are continually up to date. And that is a point I'd like to make. How many of you have waited for updates to a property management system? Right? Or I really like that new feature, or I've got a bug that's really causing me problems. I want to update it. But I can't update it because I have to go around to all my hotels, I have to wait for the supplier. One of the opportunities of cloud, and a big one for our industry, because we are distributed, is that the supplier makes one change, they make it in one place, and everybody gets it immediately. And so we are up to date. And that's exactly the same here with Office 365. So I strongly urge you, if you want to go to cloud, and you need to, then look at the simple things first. And by far the most simple thing to do is move your email and move your Office applications out to a cloud, and do it now, because you can, and it's simple and it's cost effective. I've already done it, and I'm benefiting from it, and I would urge you to as well. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, and certainly if there's any questions, I'll take them.
Als er nu mensen zijn die vragen hebben, dan is dit wel het moment voordat we weer op het vliegtuig zitten vanmiddag. Iemand? Dan breng ik de microfoon. Helemaal niemand? Zelfs Martin Lindelaf niet? Ik breng de microfoon.
Nick, this is Martin Lindelaf. You said from about Roomkey that you were definitely against this new group of professionals who have said from, okay, well, let's combine the forces and go against Expedia, Booking.com and so on. I totally disagree with you on this point, because I think it would be very good that all of us would join them if you work for a larger group and say from, okay, let's try to bring the cost down. Yeah, like what is the first purpose of Roomkey.com?
It's a very valid opinion, and it is a very valid opinion, and it's a very predictable opinion. I'm just looking at it longer term and saying that if any one of the big players, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, decided to get into hotel inventory merchandising and put billions of dollars behind it, I think Roomkey would be history immediately, because they would be able to buy their way into our market, so in a very effective way. So I don't fundamentally think that Roomkey it's a response to an immediate problem, but it is not, I think, looking at a long-term problem. It's not going to change things, in my view, in a fundamental way. Unless maybe all of the hotel industry decided to use room key. But I don't see that. I really don't. I don't see that. So.
I hope they will.
I can actually predict what's going to happen now. And then room key will say, oh, but we have operating costs, and we have to cover those costs. Let's start at 3%.
Yes.
Becoming 8, 5, 15, 25. That is the other experience. Thanks a lot, Nick. Very interesting presentation. I think it was.